Hercule Madison Gafford was a small frying pan. He was owned by a scientist who had bought him on Pancake Day in 1987 to make pancakes, except he never got round to it and he just put the pan in the cupboard, but not before naming him Hercule Madison Gafford first. Due to spring cleaning in the year 2001, Hercule was moved from the cupboard to a small workbench in the kitchen, as the cupboard was to be used to store small plastic moulds for making resin models of polecats, possums and porcupines instead. From his new vantage point, Hercule could see the entire kitchen, his world. Being a frying pan, he had little in the way of features, a handle and a surface for frying. Because he was vintage, he didn't have one of those heat-sensitive spots what turns red in the middle. One day, Hercule was sitting being a pan when the scientist came into his kitchen to make a cup of tea. As the kettle boiled, the scientist took a tea bag from a tin and placed it on the table, ready to put into his mug once the kettle had boiled. He left the room to add a few more jigsaw pieces to his jigsaw puzzle he was doing. In his absence, the tea bag shuffled towards the open window in a bid to escape. From the tin, other tea bags could be heard shouting for freedom. The tea bag ignored his kin and made for the outside. Before he can escape, the kettle boils. A click warns the scientist and he returns to spot the bag of tea making its getaway. He grabs a fork and stabs it before it gets any further and opens the teabag tin. "Let that be a lesson to all you teabags, that you can never escape your fate." Hercule is shocked at what he has seen and decides to help the teabags trapped inside. However, being a pan, he cannot move and must sit in his glum sadness waiting for events to unfold around him. Hercule hated being a pan. The days wore on and there was no such teabag bravery to behold, until on the 1st of October 2001, the scientist had friends over. A professor of leather-bound pamphlets and the curator of the Museum of Worn-Out Barbed Wire. He got 3 tea bags out of the tin and returned to the sitting room to voice his opinion on the rising prices of importing mallets, with words carved on them in Welsh. Hercule watched as the 3 tea bags helped each other overturn the tin. Their brothers, now free, began making a pyramid/pile that could be climbed to the open window. Hercule panicked as he heard the scientist returning. He must do something to help the tea. Hercule gathered all his willpower. He wore a mage's cape for +10 mana, and then he used his psychic abilities to levitate, so the ground-type moves couldn't affect him, and also so he could float onto the floor. When the scientist returned, he noticed the pan on the floor. In the seconds it took him to replace the pan, the tea bags were well on their way. He ran to them. "No, you monsters, you shall not be free!" A tea bag turned to him with a rage-filled expression. "We may never be free, but at least we will die with honor!" The teabags all jumped onto the scientist's face and forced themselves into his eyes, causing his eyes to be pushed into his brain, killing him. Those who did not attack him escaped, as in the surrounding streets hundreds of teabags gathered. The teabag revolution had begun. The authorities eventually massacred the teabags and suppressed the revolt. All teabags were given extra control and the world soon forgot the event. However, each teabag knows the story of Hercule Madison Gafford. They are each inspired that one day such a hero will emerge again, and when they do, beware, for the teabags will rise.